Hello, happy Tuesday again, beautiful tribe. And I know it's been a little while since we've had one of these lives, but I'm really excited to share today because there was something that was put in my heart as I was doing some morning reading and some morning devotional time. So I will go ahead and get started. I wanted to talk a little bit about wasted wisdom and wasted understanding. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. And as I always say in the lives, you're welcome to join me. So if you want to request to join the conversation and just either ask me something live, or just you want to share something, you want to give an example, give a testimony of something that you're experiencing or you're going through in this process, you're welcome to come in. So just if you know how to request to join the conversation, you could do so here on the live, and I'll welcome you into the live chat. So I wanted to talk about wasted wisdom. And so what wasted wisdom looks like in our life is basically knowledge without understanding. And so when we have knowledge and we have this information that we're taking in consistently without actually understanding it, without actually processing it and filtering it into our hearts and into our minds, then something happens where it's just, we're not fertile soil. So you can actually plant seeds into a soil that has absolutely no foundation, that has absolutely no roots, that has absolutely nothing to really nurture that growth and nurture that seed to really sprout. And so we live in a time where we have so much technology, we have so much information constantly bombarding us, information with quotes, information with articles. Just the works. Before we just had books and maybe a couple encyclopedias that we read by choice. And now we just have information bombarding us from all angles at all times. And so I'm wondering what we're doing with this information that we're learning, and especially when it's information that's really noteworthy for us, because we receive a lot of information that is irrelevant to us. But we also receive a lot of information that we find to be noteworthy or bookmark worthy, right? So we'll actually highlight certain things. I love to highlight books when I'm reading them, or just underline them and write notes. But also sometimes we'll highlight, or we'll save a quote, or we'll save something really powerful and really special that we read. However, how are we actually using that information? How are we actualizing that information into our lives? So I wanted to give this example. The story goes of this guy who actually went on a plane ride with one of his really close friends. His close friend was a pilot, and they go up on this plane and they're basically looking at this beautiful scenery. All of a sudden, his friend, who is the pilot, has this heart attack and just dies right on the spot, or just passes out right on the spot, and has no way of operating this plane. So this guy who was on this trip with his best friend all of a sudden has to take control of this plane, and all of a sudden has to start screaming and yelling at control center, help, 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 I don't know how to fly this plane. So the control center help tells him, hey, you're in luck. So not only am I the control center today, but I'm also a flight instructor. So obviously this is a huge relief when you're talking to the flight instructor and you feel like you're about to die. So the flight instructor actually tells him, okay, let's go through the process. I want you to learn this. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to land the plane. This is how you're going to, journey around. And so he does several laps around the airport, around the place where he's going to land on the strip. Turns out that then the pilot the control center tells him, okay, this is really great information that you've just learned. Now this is going to be the most important part. He's like, sure, what is it? He's like, now you need to apply everything you just learned, because you can have all this information and you could have learned everything that you needed to land this plane and to survive. But if you don't actually use this information, it's completely irrelevant. And I feel like that relates so much to everything in our lives, as we have so much information, we have so much knowledge, and sometimes even these really hard, solid nuggets of wisdom in our lives, and we just don't use them. They go to waste, or we just get too busy to actually implement them, or to actually sit on them long enough or meditate on them long enough to say, how am I going to implement this in my life? And how am I actually going to really make this change my life? Because we want change. So many of us, we want to change, we want to evolve, we want to grow into these people that we visualize, or that we ideally know we were created to be, and we were created to operate in a certain divinity, right? But so many of us feel so stuck sometimes, and we don't understand why we're stuck, and we don't understand why we hear all these good things, or why we see all these wonderful people sharing wise information, whether it's a spiritual leader, or whether it's a meditation coach, or a yoga instructor, or even just a professor in college. They're able to share such wise and knowledgeable information. However, we get stuck at just knowing it. We get stuck at hearing it, maybe processing it a little bit. And so today I want to encourage us to put those things into action. And I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to encourage you to do something that I personally do. Now, before I go into how to implement these things into our lives, I want to talk a little bit also about wise counsel. And I know that this is a little bit hard for us, especially in our culture, because we are a culture of rebellion and we're a culture of individuality and of just figuring our own voice and our own thing, which is a great thing. I really agree that it is wonderful for us to have our own opinions and our own voices about things. But I also think there is a very wise and essential part of understanding and learning from those who have gone before us. And a lot of times it's very hard for us to take wise counsel from those who have come before us and those people who have actually lived through those journeys, who have experienced certain things and who are able to impart that wisdom into us. And so for me, wise counsel is submitting to a humble obedience. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to obey whatever thing I hear or whatever every person says, but I do know that there are certain key people in my life that are mentors, that are solid spiritual leaders and guides, and people who I respect. And not only do I respect for what they share with me, but I respect them for the way they live their lives. And I'm able to see that exemplified, not only what they're sharing, but what they're living out. And so with those types of people, I call them wise counsel in my life. And I like to submit to the obedience of this knowledge and of this information and this wisdom that they're imparting to me. And so part of wisdom is being obedient to the things that you learn. So if you're reading a really valuable book that's teaching you these cornerstone principles for your life, and you're able to abide by them and you obey them, that is where wisdom really lies. It's not in reading it and knowing it. It's in obeying the things that you know resonate as truth in your lives. Now, we have an aversion to this word obey because for so many years we've seen this word being misused and mistreated and just abused in so many ways. So I just want to encourage us to reframe the word obeying and the obedience to wisdom and the obedience to wise counsel in our lives, whether that's books, whether that's physical resources, or whether that's actually people in our lives that speak wisdom into our lives. Now, I want to share another quick story. This is kind of a little bit of a funny one, but still relevant. And so the story goes that there's this guy who has this like rat infestation problem in his office. So he leaves his home and he's getting in the car to go to the office and get rid of the rat infestation problem. So all of a sudden he forgot something in his home. So he gets out of the car. He lives right there. So he decided, I'm gonna leave the car on, the ignition on, everything, door open, just gonna grab this, this key or whatnot and just hurry up and go. So all of a sudden, as he goes inside, somebody, this robber just passes by, comes, steals his car and just takes off. And so this guy, all of a sudden, he's reporting this, and he calls the officials, the city officials, and it's like, somebody stole my car. This is what's going on. We need to get him. We need to get him here now. We need to get him here right away. And so all of a sudden, this guy's freaking out because he needs to get this guy to respond and to understand what's going on. And they look for him everywhere. They put announcements everywhere. And they say, please, whoever has this car, return it right now. Respond to this right now. Or just come and report to this location ASAP. And so this guy just keeps going and keeps going. Turns out that when they actually revealed the reason that they wanted, that this car owner was so desperately freaking out about this guy, was not even about the car. It was because in the front seat, on the console, he actually had some crackers that had rat poison on them. And so that was his intention, was to go get rid of the rat infestation problem. However, the guy that was riding the car was just thinking, oh shoot, I'm getting the hell away from here. And whoever these people are, they're just trying to get me. They're trying to get at me. And so I think this applies to a lot of the wisdom and the things that happen in our lives. And so we don't always understand the reason why. We don't always understand the reason why, God has these ways that he wants us to live. Sometimes we don't understand why the good things in our lives are difficult. And we think, oh my gosh, when we're little, we think, oh, our parents just want to tell us what not to do. And they just want to ruin our lives. That, when a parent tells you, don't jump in front of the street, it's not because they don't want you to have fun or because they don't want you to enjoy your life and be a kid. It's because they want you to live. It's because they don't want you to die. They don't want you to get hit by a car, because they want you to have an abundant and long-lasting life. And so I think these principles really apply to our lives when it comes to the wise counsel of parents, of really close friends who have wisdom, who really understand us, who have walked with us through life, people who we know really care about us, and books, teachings, quotes, whatever it may be that we know really applies to our lives. Instead of immediately getting offended by it or feeling judged by the things, may we really internalize these things and understand the value that they have in keeping us alive, keeping us healthy, keeping us thriving, and keeping us on the right track. So the obedience in this case is for our own good. The obedience is for our own growth and our own evolution. And so I really want to encourage us to really drift away from the rebellious spirit, to drift away a little bit from the skepticism that I know is so difficult in our time and in our culture, that we're just so skeptical about everything that's out there and the intentions of everyone, because there has been so much scamming and so much pain and so much hurt and so many people just out to get their own. But in reality, we need to keep our heart pure. We need to keep our roots pure, because we might be able to produce a lot of great fruit, but if our roots are not pure and if our roots are rotting, then regardless of how much great fruit we produce, there's still a level of stagnation in our lives. And there's still a level of lack of happiness and lack of joy and fulfillment in what we do if our roots themselves are not pure, they're not clean, and they're not constantly being fed by clean, fresh water. And I also want us to get rid of the lack of consideration for what could be from the wise counsel that we receive in our lives. So what I want to do is suggest that this week, we think about the things that we've learned maybe this week or maybe this last month. Maybe it could be from a book that you've read. Maybe it could be from a really great documentary that you watched. Maybe it could be something from a quote that you read that really struck at your heartstrings. And you just felt like this really impacted me, and it had some very powerful, direct voice towards me. And so if you feel like it's something that spoke to you, I want you to write that thing down. Or maybe it's a couple of things. So write some of those things down, and I want you to actually internalize, how is this affecting my life? How can I apply this to my life? So in my morning journals, when I do like my devotionals, I'll choose like a scripture, which is like anything that I'm reading, whether it's from the Bible or from another book, another inspiration book that I'm reading. Then I basically do the acronym SOAP. So S is for scripture, O is for observation. So I observe what's going on in this scripture, or I notice what's going on in this passage, and I say, if it's a self-help book, it might not necessarily be a passage, but I try to conceptualize what that is telling me. Then A stands for application. How do I apply that to my life? And so I basically look at how that, whether it's something from history or whether it's something that's a general great concept, how does that apply to my everyday life? How can I implement that? And then some time with prayer. So for you, it might be prayer or meditation. And meditating doesn't necessarily mean sitting down with your eyes closed and clearing out your mind. Meditation can just be thinking about your life on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. How would this look like if I implemented this into my life, if I were to actually carry this out? So I want you to think about that, and think about what is something, maybe one thing or more than one thing it could be, that you've learned this week or that you've learned this month that you would like to really implement, something that really spoke to you. And so write that down, and then I want you to write down how exactly you're planning to implement this. So I want to share a little personal story, and this is really gross, so I apologize. But for a really long time, probably since I was like 14 or 15, I couldn't get myself to brush my teeth at night. It was the craziest thing, and considering my mom was a dentist growing up, this was like sacrilegious. So I could not get myself to brush my teeth at night. It was just like the craziest thing. I would, do different things. I would take a shower. I would do all my personal maintenance things, but for some reason I would just always forget to brush my teeth at night. It just didn't make sense because I would only brush them in the morning or during the day in the sink. But I take a shower every night, so it was just really difficult for me to do that. So I decided, how do I implement the fact that I know I'm supposed to brush my teeth at night and that I know that I need to do it? How can I implement this in my everyday life so I don't forget it or so that it's not impractical for me? So what I did is, ever since I was probably like 17 years old, I have never stopped having 2 toothbrushes and 2 tubes of toothpaste. And so I have one on the sink and I have one in the shower. So in the shower, I actually have toothpaste, I have a toothbrush, and I have a little cup with, and a little bottle of, peppermint oil to do mouthwash. So if I didn't have that in the shower, I would not be brushing my teeth at night. I guarantee you that still at this age and at this point in life, I would not be brushing my teeth at night, which I know is really gross. So I just want to share this with you. It could be very simple adjustments in your life. It could be very simple as saying, you know what, I want to start reading every day. I want to read a little bit instead of watching TV or instead of social media. Well, you know what, put that book that you've been wanting to read, put it right by your bed. Put it on your nightstand. Put it there with something inspiring, with something that you know would make you crave to read at that time. And so decide on what those things are. Not just listen to the things and hope that you're going to do them or hope that you're going to implement them, but decide to implement them. And by deciding, that means you're creating a game plan. So decide, what is that one thing that you've learned? What is that one nugget of wisdom that you've gotten this week or this month, and decide how you are going to implement it. So thank you so much for tuning in. That is all I have to share with you today. And maybe this is all you learned this week, you know, like maybe this is the thing that you want to implement. So now you just want to think back on something that you've learned or that has struck your heart at some point. So thank you guys so much for joining in today. And please, if you want to share what is that thing that you're going to implement, I would love that. You can either share it in one of the comments of one of the posts that I have on Instagram, or you can share it by sending me a direct message and telling me either something that you're struggling with that you would really like to implement, or what you're actually planning to implement. Because I would say that planning and making that decision is half the battle. So let's go ahead and do this. And I know that you're going to be successful at it. And I want to touch base with you next week and see how that goes. So I'm actually going to publish a post asking how it went for everyone who watched the live today. And thank you guys so much. Hi from Argentina. Hi from Morocco. All of you amazing, wonderful people in this tribe. I'm so thankful for you. And if you ever want to join in here and just ask to join the live, I love hearing your thoughts. I love hearing your opinions. If anybody wants to join right now, I'll stay on here for like a minute. If anybody wants to join or tell me something, or tell me if this struck a chord for you, or you found this helpful, please do. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear your feedback. Thank you for all the little hearts and all the little notifications on here. But I am so thankful for you guys each and every day. So do not lose the habit of this community. Even though we have a phone and even though we have a technology resource, we are still humans on the other side of these resources and on the other side of these technological gadgets. So let's keep humanity human. Let's keep our connection intact and integral. And let's just continue to grow and build these communities and these tribes in spite of the technological hurdles, because this actually allows us to stay connected in whatever way. So I'm so thankful for this, and please share this with anyone. I'm going to leave it live for 24 hours and share with anyone who you think would like to listen to this message. Thank you guys again. Mwah, and have an amazing Tuesday. Cannot wait to chat with you guys again this week. Bye.